Yeah, welcome all. Good morning. Now let's invite our first speaker, Deepak Dhananjaya.
Okay, good morning, everybody. I'm Deepak Dhananjaya. I'm an agile. I have two professions. I'm an agile coach, leadership coach, and I'm also a psychotherapist, a trained and certified psychotherapist. I'm one of the co-founders of Agile Sattva Consulting. We do work on change management, agile transformations, all effectiveness, leadership building, all of that. Yeah. Um, this is not a usual form of workshop or talks that I do because I like it to be interactive. So we will try to contain my anxiety around not able to interact with you, not seeing you, and still able to uh, get the point across. And maybe you can resonate with what I'm saying. Yeah. Yeah. So before we continue, when we talk about safety, right? Psychological safety. The question is, what is the safety from? Right? We often just talk about safety, but what is the safety really from? And I think that is the most important thing for me from both aspects, because I'm a coach and I work in the agile space, which is mostly an humane way of software development process. The other part is I'm also a psychotherapist and behavioral uh, sciences, right? I come from that background. So for me to understand what is the safety from, what are we really scared of, what is the danger, I'll take that route to develop safety. And that's what we're going to do now. Quickly grab a piece of paper, pen, note somewhere where you can draw something. Yeah. um, think of a situation where you felt unsafe with some people, yeah, in office environment preferably, because this is morely organization oriented. What was the danger? What did you feel unsafe about? Yeah. What was causing the danger? Yeah. Was it an event? Was it a particular action you did or particular action that somebody else did? Why were you feeling unsafe? Were you feeling unsafe because of the other person or what they would do, what they would respond? Yeah. Who were involved in that? Pick one or two people who were involved in that situation. Just think of the situation. Yeah. Remember this and think of a situation where you felt safe. Yeah. What, why was it feeling safe? Who was in the situation? What about this person or people involved were you feeling safe about? How do you know that you were feeling safe about? Yeah, just think about these two situations. Then I'm going to introduce you to a concept which is called psychological distance. Yeah. Which is, this is the perceived distance in terms of relationship that exists between the parties. Yeah. So I have a perception of how close or far a person is in any given situation. Yeah. So when we think of these two situations and the people involved, on that piece of paper, draw this. Yeah. This is an example. It doesn't have to be like this. Yeah. Draw yourself and the people whom you feel safe and people whom you don't feel safe, and see how far they are to you. Now, what does this indicate is that psychological distance, the farther the psychological distance, the less safe we feel with people. Yeah? The closer psychological distance is, more safer we feel. Yeah? When we feel safer, what is the potential when we feel safer in with a person? The potential is spontaneity. You can have open conversation, more creativity, more thoughts exchange. Yeah, there is a togetherness. There is a collaboration improves. When there is not safe, when we don't feel safe, we are guarded, right? Then when we are guarded, collaboration automatically it's um, dips. Yeah, we don't feel we always feel they're judging us, or trying to find faults, or we are not open enough. So that's the cost. So we're just having a perception around this. You're just getting a visual perception around what does this indicate psychologically. So when you look at those two scenarios, right? What was the root cause of feeling unsafe? There are some of the root causes are lack of trust, lack of open communication, gossips. That means they speak up behind your back, feeling of judgments, yeah, use of positional power irrationally, assumptions of what I think they are saying or what they think I'm saying may not be intending to, yeah, misunderstandings. All of this creates psychological distance, and when the psychological distance is more in a difficult situation, we start feeling unsafe, yeah, because we fear judgment, we fear um, you know attack, we feel discomfort, so it doesn't feel safe enough, so the trust gets impacted, yeah. So we've established what does psychological distance mean, what creates the threat, yeah, uh, and what is our perceived notion of psychological distance. We have established these three elements, yeah. What I want to introduce you to an iceberg concept, yeah. What we when we interact with the other person, yeah, and now most importantly, it's important to keep this in mind because we are working remotely, right? What we see is what I say and what I do, what you say and what you do. That's all we are able to see, right? Because that's the behavior and actions. But what influences us to do certain actions and behaviors are underlying what we see. That is feelings. Yeah, I might be angry. That's why I might be behaving like this. I might have a belief about certain things which influences my behavior, yeah, my value systems, ethics, conditioning from my own upbringing, right, and then my own past experiences. I like to take an example. I was working with an organization, a team, right, when we were doing a similar session, building trust, which is cliched word according to me, but what we are doing is establishing, bridging the psychological distance. That means the workshop was intended to bring people together, yeah, bring people closer. So in that scenario, one of the team members said that I feel unsafe when my manager doesn't, when we made a big release and the manager walked past me and didn't even smile and say congratulations, yeah. When manager heard this, he said, "Oh gosh, it was such a silly mistake from my side because morning, my mother wasn't well and I just got her to the hospital and we're waiting for test results. And when I came back to the office, I was preoccupied with that and I just didn't notice it." You see, that was what influenced him was his experience from the morning, yeah, and what he did impacted the employee, and at that moment there was a feeling of unsafe because he felt like he didn't acknowledge, right? So that was basically what impacted the psychological distance. It is not just one event, it's a collective events of like that. Once we have an experience, we build narratives for the next experiences, and that keeps in the loop, right? So this is one of the examples how uh, we can tend to miss what is below what we see and hear. A very dear colleague of mine keeps quoting this, yeah, we judge others by their behaviors and we judge ourselves by our intent, because intent is internally, right? Nobody knows our intent, we know our intent, right? So we always say, I did this because I felt it was like this, yeah, I felt it was right, was my intention. But when we judge others by their behaviors, very easy to judge by he did that, we don't explore the intent, right? What we want to start establishing for feeling safe in organizations, teams, relationships is we want to understand at what is below what we see and do, right? Because that creates a sense of safety, it builds trust, it builds understanding. We understand what the other person, we understand where the other person is coming from, we understand his or her or their frame of reference, right? And then I'm open to share my frame of reference as well, right? I'm not going to look at the questions. This is very hard for me as I'm speaking, because I feel very, very like one-sided conversation, which is how it's meant to be. But that's just not my comfort. So please bear with me. If you have questions, we will look at it at the end, right? Now, how do we achieve that? Yeah. How do we? It's easier said than done, right? We want to understand deeper. It's not. It's not easy. It's just, how do we get into somebody else's mind or internal internal process and understand why they're doing what they're doing? So there are some simple or not so simple tools, which needs practice, like any exercise, which is called psychological contracts. I love this. Love this concept because this is very, very useful. What is psychological contracts? Psychological contracts are understanding people at a deeper level, right? We want to understand people at this level. So we establish contracts. When you say contracts, it's an agreement, mutual agreement to know each other towards something, right? So we establish contracts to connect at this level. Yeah. So one of the ways we do that is, there are three simple tools that I've computed myself. Is validate your assumption, right? Don't assume what you're thinking about the other person is right? When you, so some example things that you can start doing is, when you behave like this, I assume it is dash. Is it right? If not, what is the reason for my behavior? What you might be thinking maybe is right, then you clarify it, so you're not assuming then. Yeah. Otherwise, it gives an opportunity for the other person to say what is the reason for his behavior. Yeah. The second aspect is clarify your behavior. Yeah. When I behave this way, I intend dash. Yeah. And nothing else. Please clarify if you feel the other way. Right. So what we are saying is, we are sharing our intent, and then inviting the other person to clarify if they are understanding it wrong or understanding the other way, right? One of the most powerful tools that I've used is feedback loops, right? When we say what does that is, we often don't understand each other, um, because we often don't let the other person know how they impact us. We're not blaming them for how we feel, but we are saying how they impact me in their behaviors. So feedback loops are very important, right? When you do or say this, it impacts me like this. When you raise your voice, I freeze. That's how I get impacted. Yeah. So then what you're doing is, by doing all of this, you're going deeper level of understanding with each other, right? So um, what we are establishing is a connection at more than what we see in here, right? It's very important for us to go back to places where we have misunderstood, where we are misunderstanding somebody or assuming something, and start uh, establishing some psychological contracts. One of the psychological contracts that I've not put here is agreeing to share how we deal with disappointments, right? An example I would like to say, me and my colleague Gunjan were working on a task together, and it was a time bound oriented task. Okay. And I was very busy with many other things. And so she kept asking me when I could deliver it, when I could finish my part of the work. I kept dodging it. I kept saying, I will do it, I will do it, and I will do it. And at one point, she got frustrated, saying that you keep saying you'll do it, but you've not finished it. Like, we are on time. And that at that moment, I felt unsafe. She felt unsafe, because We were just experiencing a dysfunctional behavior from both of our sides, because I felt like she was attacking me, and she felt like I was not respectful for towards the task. And that opened up a conversation, because we both are psychotherapists, we both are behavioral coaches. It opened up a conversation for us, saying, hey, actually I was busy with other things and I didn't make this a priority, and I was feeling bad that this was not a priority, and I didn't want to say that to you. She understood where I was coming from, not necessarily agree in agreement. Yeah. And then the second part was, she said, okay, if you um, feel that you couldn't do it, you could just say that to me and I wouldn't mistake it. You see, what we're doing at that is we're establishing a contract of understanding. Yeah. Um, a space creates for us to go one level below and understand why we're doing what we're doing, right? And then we establish a contract saying that when we are disappointed with each other, we will talk to each other and not keep it to ourselves. That's a very good bridge contract between two people or between a group of people, when we start talking, to say that, hey, when I'm disappointed, how will we handle the situation? When we both are in disappointment with each other, how will we handle it? Maybe we talk over a coffee, or we go out and have a conversation, right? So this is a core aspect which builds psychological distance, which creates safety. And when we do start doing that, it builds authentic connections, it builds respect, then trust gets automatically refueled. It reduces psychological distance. Yeah, another caution that I want to really let you guys know is, when we're talking about psychological distance, or when we're talking about psychological contracts, it's not about liking. Yeah, we're not forcing people to like each other and fall in love with each other. That's not what we are saying. What we are saying is, we want to be authentic as possible, and that's a key important part of being in a safe environment. There are colleagues that I work with where I not necessarily like them, yeah, because of different personalities, but doesn't mean that I may not have authentic relationship with them, yeah, authentic conversations with them, or professional engagement, which is gossip free, or which is efficient. Yeah, what I'm beginning to say is that, don't mistake psychological contracts to help. It will, or eventually it may help in liking other, but that is not the goal. The goal is to build authentic connections, respectful conversations, open communication, where each of the people feel safe. That's one aspect. Now we're talking about, you may think that there's no other way for me to know, and I'm not able to clarify because there's a lot of us here. We may think that it's just between two people, but no, it's not just between two people. Yeah, if you're working in a team, the team is engaged, and there are so many people like this, right? So there are so many people we see them doing, and they see us what we are doing and saying. So it's important for us as a process um, to have certain meetings or certain conversations where people can start building psychological contracts. Yeah. Now, this makes it even more harder when we are working remotely. For example, we are working from 9 to 5, and some people come by 9:30 when we're working in the office, and some people come by 10. By 10, everybody is already there in the office, and we leave by 5, between 4:30 to 5, right? But when we're working from home, we don't know that, right? If somebody is not online, do we start assuming that they're not working, or do we ask the person, hey, what are you doing, directly, right? So there's a lot of scope of misunderstandings, and it becomes an essential part for us to build psychological contracts during this process. Some of the psychological contracts are, hey, when I'm offline, what does it mean? Yeah, what time and from what time to what time do we agree that we'll all be online, so we have some airtime together? Yeah, this is a way of establishing some contract, so we feel safe, we feel clear. Yeah, uh, that's one aspect of why it's harder. Yeah, the second aspect is we are often conditioned that corporate world or in organization we don't talk about feelings, right? But you see, what influences is our feelings and beliefs. Yeah, it's very important for us to pay attention to how we feel about each other, how we feel in the, we don't necessarily have to change the feeling, but it's important to know that. So we are always in it's open. Yeah, it's not, it's transparent, it's not hidden, there's no hidden agenda. So one of the ways that I do this in teams, in larger teams, is during retrospection, the last 20 minutes of the retrospection, I keep it unstructured with teams and say, hey, this 20 minutes is for you guys, right? Uh, if you feel like you want to share, or if you were unhappy with something that happened in this sprint, right? Or in this week, and you didn't have an opportunity to tell this to that person, this is a good time. Yeah. The only rule is the person who hears it will not start justifying it, will listen to the other person, right? And then share how they are feeling by what the other person shared. So what starts off as an unstructured, will start people thinking it's silly and smiling and giggling and all that, starts to become more and more authentic over a period of time. And it, of course, it needs to be moderated so that it doesn't get into blame game. It doesn't get into justifying. It doesn't get into I am right and you're wrong mode. What we start doing then is we start helping them connect at this level. Yeah. So that's been very, very useful way of integrating it without adding an additional meeting to the teams, because when we all know when we say one more meeting, the teams will jump on us, right? So it's better we integrated all of these things as part of some of the existing ones, right? I'm hoping this gives you some sense of what this psychological contracts are and what safety really means. Yeah, because safety word is used very cliched, very um, commonly, but we have to understand what is the safety from in the context. What are we running? What is the danger? What do we want to run away from? And maybe confront that with creating safe environment, right? Okay, now take a moment before I close. Go back to uh, the situation where you felt safe. Now, if you have to use one of these tools, yeah, just think. Make an attempt to do, what would you do differently? Would you have this conversation? Would you say, give a feedback loop saying that when you said this, this happened to me? Or when you would you clarify your behavior? Would you clarify their behavior? Think about one way to address that if it happens again, or in that situation, what you could do differently. Yeah. Yeah. And some reading material. We've just recently published an article on a journal around this, specifically on psychological contracts, which is detailed about different people involved, different stakeholders involved. You can always have a look at it. And if you have questions post this sessions, you can reach out to me on this. I'm now open for questions. Okay, I'm just going to stop presenting so I have more air, at least the feeling that I'm seeing you guys. Okay, so in the remote work, how can we go for coffee? Oh, that's an interesting thing. Yeah, like what you have established, started doing now in one of the organization. I'm just going to go randomly with the questions. Um, right. So we dedicate a time in the week or few days a week. Especially me and my colleague used to work a lot together. So we say, hey, Wednesdays, 3 p.m., 3 to 4, we just chit chat. No work conversation. We just grab a coffee and sit together and chit chat, talk about silly things, talk about how our days have been. You know, it is very possible. It seems very impersonal to begin with, but it does gives something better than nothing. Yeah. How to practice psychological contracts during remote setup? Are there working rules? Yes. First thing is very important when you're establishing psychological contract is not get into blame games, not pinpointing. So that's the first rule. And a moderator needs to be there where you say that, your job is to just moderate the session. That means you don't let people go on justifying more. Just what we need to help people is to listen without getting our guards up. That's hard, right? How do we? It's very hard because when I am saying to you that when you do this, I freeze. It's not easy for you to hear that. Or when you're saying that to me, that, hey, when you're not engaging with me, I lose contact, right? It's hard, but that's what we want to help people navigate. We want to help people to start listening at a deeper level, and that by listening we understand the other person. So the moderator's job is to not get the people into justifying mode. Well, they have all the justification. We always have justification why the sky is blue today, why it's going to rain, or why it's not going to rain. Yeah, that's not the point. The point is, can I establish a space where you can listen to me, where I feel like you're listening and not justifying. That's the key rule, I think, Karan. Is this link not clickable? I'm hoping this is clickable. Okay.
Yes, Deepak. We have one more question from Harish Kumar.
Yes.
His question is, when layoff happens in a particular team due to politics, how to ensure psychological safety?
Sorry, can you repeat the question? When layoff happens in a particular team due to politics, how to ensure it's hard. Yeah, let's not try to be magical about this, right? When layoffs are happening, that definitely creates a threat. So if you're an organization, if you're on the other side who's responsible, or leadership roles, create a space for conversation. Don't be afraid to have an open house with smaller groups or bigger groups if you can manage. But if it's remote, it's better to have like 10-15 members at a group at the same time, and open conversation with them. Because what they want to know is, why are you laying off? Be authentic, as authentic as you can be. Doesn't mean you have to share every information, because some may be confidential, but what you need to be saying to people who are there, that they need to feel safe. That's your original idea, right? Because if they're not safe, it directly impacts on the productivity. So be selfish in that sense, at least, to provide a space for conversation, to say, hey, this is a space for you to clarify, and we want to hear what you're going through, right? So that way, at least they're sharing it to you directly and not having sub conversations. Yeah. I hope that gives some sense, Harish. Definitely, it's not an easy place to be in, and we cannot make it nice. It is not a nice place. So let's accept that fact first and create a space for conversation. How do we get another person in agreement to create a psychological contract? Well, similar, we cannot force the other person to get into a contract, right? We can only invite them. But what we can continuously do is, we can be always in the psychological contract, right? So if the other person doesn't want to share how the person is feeling and why they're saying it, we can always say that when you don't want to share, it shuts me off. Like, I don't feel connected. Keep saying that, and sometimes some things will open up. See, I'm from a belief that all of this takes time, right? And there's nothing magical about it. And we are all doing all of this in different ways, because we are all in relationships in one way or the other, right? So when there is relationships, there is disappointments, and we survive through disappointments. So what I'm giving you is a frame of understanding of what we sometimes are already doing, or different ways of doing it. Okay. Do you think different?
Thanks, Deepak, for answering that. We have one more question from Sujit Bahibahukar.
Yes.
You have given an example of retrospect.
Yeah.
and you have said that positives and negatives.
Yeah.
He's saying that positive is win-win situation for the team, but
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to negative scenario, a
Mm-hmm.
person being addressed negative can have a grudge
Yeah.
raising in a conflict. Would it be a damaging situation in that case?
I don't think so. Like, I get what you're saying, Sujit, because when we are when we are saying, when we're allowing people to say how they're feeling, it's not to place the blame, and that's the key job of the moderator for us. It's a skill job, right? So when we are saying, okay, like another example I can take, there was a team that I was working with, and they said that to a designer, you know what, every time you don't share the design with me ahead, I feel left out, and I feel really disappointed because I don't feel involved in the creative process, right? And that's about it. When we, of course, the designer is not happy about it. At least there's truth out. We don't behave like it's not happened, right? So we're not looking at a happy. See, happy is overrated. Happy situations. I'm not the or another good that you brought it up, because another objective of psychological contract is not to create happy spaces, because we can never be in happy spaces all the time. What we want to create is authentic spaces. So by sharing this, there is a disappointment. At least they know that how they've impacted, and there's a possibility for growth. So we ask the person who's disappointed to say that, hey, how has that impacted you? Yeah, would you want to have a conversation in front of me with this person? So we set rules around this. So what we are aiming for is authentic space, not happy space. And authentic space need not be always happy space, right? If, for example, good example of previous conversation was about laying off. Laying off is not a happy place. It's going to be a difficult place. So authentic place is to be authentic, to acknowledge the fear of people. Yeah. So yeah. Do we have more time for questions, Ajay?
Yeah, yeah, Deepak, thanks for answering. In the interest of time,
Yeah.
we can't take any more questions.
Yeah.
Thanks, uh, thanks participants for asking your questions, and thank you, Deepak. It was a very insightful session.